Well, good morning. This is in our crane. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, September the 23rd, 2017. I should say it should be a beautiful Saturday morning. Unfortunately, the sun seems to be a bit hazy due to some aircraft trails crisscrossing the sky here. But nonetheless, it's quite pleasant. There's a bit of a Vale of Pickering breeze right now, and it's very pleasant to be out this time of the morning. Unfortunately, as you can see, I'm standing in front of the KM8 FRACK pad here at Kirby, Misperton. Now, this has been a very interesting week. It's really been the second week of deliveries here at KM8, and as you can see, the containers which will form the sound barrier here are being put in place. This is the first layer, and then there'll be another layer of containers put on top of that to screen the sound, but also of course to screen the cameras. But I am pleased to say that the security guards wandered over this morning to bid me good morning, having formally acknowledged that I am indeed standing and filming on a public footpath. So at least we have that little issue resolved. Okay, so September 23rd. Well, there's one particular religious sect that believes that today is the day on which the world will end. Now, in philosophy, epistemology is the theory of knowledge. And in the interests of epistemological integrity, I would have to say, I don't know. Today could indeed be the day in which the world ends. However improbable or unlikely that may seem, I would have to acknowledge that I don't know, because I haven't done the research. I haven't looked at the basis of that particular belief system. Obviously, by tomorrow morning, we'll know for sure whether or not September the 23rd, or maybe we won't, but we'll know whether September the 23rd was indeed the day in which the world came to an end. Epistemological integrity, the absolute recognition that if we don't know something to be absolutely true, then we need to acknowledge that we don't really know. And sadly, much of our belief system is actually based on information. It's not really a belief. It's embedded in us through programming that we believe it to be true in the absence of doing any research for ourselves. Now, yesterday on BBC Radio York, Chief Constable of the North Yorkshire Police, Dave Hill, demonstrated his lack of capacity for epistemological integrity. There had been an incident the previous day where one of the protectors had been thrown to the ground by an inspector of North Yorkshire Police, and had been, after waiting for an ambulance for some 2 hours, was taken to Scarborough General Hospital. Now, I and others had posted some still photographs of that incident, or in the immediate aftermath of that incident. But on BBC Radio York yesterday, Dave Hill, in response to a question from somebody calling in about this incident, said it probably didn't happen that way. Now, the correct response, of course, should have been, well, I haven't seen the evidence, I haven't had an opportunity to review the evidence, so I will reserve any comment until such time as I've had the opportunity to review the available evidence. And of course, there were evidence gatherers there. North Yorkshire Police have evidence gatherers crawling all over the protection community here, and those who come down to the gates of KM8. So they have ample footage of pretty much everything that goes on here, and if they don't, we do. So there was plenty of opportunity for Dave Hill to be appraised of that situation and to review the footage before he went on air on BBC Radio York yesterday. In response to Dave Hill's comment, I felt obliged to put up a clip of the video that was taken by another protector who was clearly seen in the still photographs as standing up against the hedge filming the incident. And she was subsequently chased and then arrested, dragged to the ground and then arrested for filming that incident. So once again we have, prima facie evidence that the police are desperate to stop us filming them, whilst applying the standard intimidatory tactic of filming everyone and everything that occurs at a peaceful protest. And I have really no problem with that, providing we're all allowed the privilege of filming in a free society. So epistemological integrity, the theory of knowledge, the recognition that unless we have done the research, then we don't really know, and we are simply regurgitating a narrative that has been programmed into us via normally the lamestream media. And that's why the BBC is not a paragon of truth, it's a paragon of establishment narrative. It's called, the TV programs are called a program for a reason. And that is true about this industry. The vast majority of people, sadly, will probably still take on board the narrative that's thrust down their throats by central government. But that does appear to be changing fairly rapidly, seeing as in the last government's own survey, only 16% of those surveyed felt that fracking, the exploitation of unconventional gas, was actually something that was appropriate for this country. So the vast majority of people either don't have a view because they haven't done the research, or they have done the research, and as we know, anybody who has done any real research will come to the conclusion that this is an industry that has no place here in the UK or anywhere else in the world come to that. So what we have is a situation right now where it's very clear that a number of the police that are being deployed here on a daily basis, and we're not seeing any normal police here, we are seeing the level ones, the PSU, the support unit, the TAU as they're called in Greater Manchester. We believed that the TAU stood for Tactical Assault Unit because that was pretty descriptive of their behaviour. In fact, I think they go under the pseudonym of Tactical Aid Unit. Anyway, what we're seeing here is people who have become actually, I think, shocked by the fact that they are being asked to physically assault elderly citizens of North Yorkshire. These are people who have a track record, they've contributed to society here. This is an area where people have lived for generations, and these PSU people, who range in age from clearly early 20s right through to close to retirement age, and some of them are very, very uncomfortable about what they're being asked to do. Sadly, others seem to get rather too much pleasure from it. But I'm making the observation, and I'm looking in the eyes of these people, and some of them are going away and doing their research, probably against the counsel of their superiors. But they're doing their research because perhaps they're starting to question why it is that these people who are not the stereotypical anti-establishment protesters, why they are putting themselves on the front line here in North Yorkshire and elsewhere to try and prevent this industry from establishing a footprint literally in their backyard, and particularly in an area whose indigenous industries are agriculture and tourism. And as we have seen elsewhere in the world, any agricultural area where this industry becomes established soon is no longer capable of contributing to the agricultural output of that country. And I can't think of a single gas field in the world that actually doubles as a tourist attraction. So why here? Well, that's a very good question, isn't it? Why here? There is an agenda, appears to be a legacy of David Cameron and George Osborne. It's not Theresa May's legacy. It's not Theresa May's agenda. But she's lumbered with it. But she doesn't have the courage to pull the plug on it. Such are the power of her financial backers. So what you're left with then is epistemological integrity of the private citizen, and those who are prepared to actually stand up and challenge what is an increasingly corrupt government with, unfortunately, corporate enforcement at their fingertips. Now, one would like to think that there are people within the military, within the police, that are capable of standing up to authority and power, i.e. the government, and saying, hang on a second, this is not right and we are not going to do it. But of course they don't, because they know very well that if they do that, then they'll probably be out of a job, lose their pension, and somebody else will be brought in to do it anyway. So what do? They push through the corporate agenda. And what are we left with? The opportunity to protest. Except that Chief Superintendent David Hannon, the Silver Commander for Operation Kingfisher, which is the designation for the campaign to force through Third Energy's presence here at Kirby Misperton, has effectively decreed that his definition of peaceful protest is to effectively allow a free speech zone, which is either side of the gate or opposite the gates, and you can stand there, you can wave your placards, you can shout, but that's it. That is protest. Yet that is totally contradictory to the government's own guidelines on peaceful protest, which clearly state that peaceful protest may include nuisance and disruption. Nuisance and disruption. That's protest. What we're experiencing here is not protest, it's not the facilitation of peaceful protest as defined under common law, which trumps statute. What we are experiencing here is corporate enforcement. We are experiencing the riding roughshod over the fundamentals of a democracy in this country. And that's why people from all around the country are really starting to get incensed now. And if the government is looking at social media, and we know they have people monitoring the social media, we know that the police monitor the social media, if those people looking at social media realise or can actually comprehend the magnitude of the consternation amongst the wider population of what's occurring here, in many respects, what you're doing is actually a gift. It's a gift because what it's having the effect of is it is showing people firsthand that the democracy that they have believed existed and had faith in for their entire lives is actually a charade. And Saeed Javid, of course, demonstrated that with his overturning of the Lancashire County Council decision where they rejected Quadrilla's application to FRACK at Preston New Road. And anyone who's driven along the road between Kirkham and Blackpool will see the abomination of the rig that's just to the right-hand side of the road as you head towards Blackpool there. And of course the Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive and the British government, who bang on about gold standard regulation and monitoring, have a complete lack of transparency over the problems that Quadrilla have experienced, and it's left to observers to point out that Quadrilla have had massive problems. It looks like they've had a well collapse, but of course they daren't admit it, and the establishment daren't admit it, because that would show that not only do we have a cowboy industry running this unconventional gas operation, but we also it exposes the lie of the gold standard regulation and the gold standard monitoring. So the theme of today is integrity of truth. If you haven't done the research, then you don't know. If you have an opinion without having done the research, you are simply regurgitating a narrative that has been programmed into you. And you know, there's a few sort of fundamental questions that you know, you simply need to ask people, and you can tell pretty instantaneously whether they're programmed or whether they still retain the capacity for independent thought, whether they retain the capacity to be a sovereign individual and not simply be a tool of the state and programmed into a particular belief system that effectively just keeps them in their role of corporate slavery. So hopefully we've got a bit of a breather today. It's the weekend. Hopefully I'll be back here tomorrow. I don't have to do a lot of research. I simply have to hang around for the next 15, 16 hours or so, and then we'll know for sure whether or not the particular religious cult that thinks that today is the end of the world, whether or not they were on the money or not. Like I said, it's not appropriate for me to have a view because I haven't done the research. So for those of you who are watching, for those of you who feel that we actually need to encourage a wider network of people to do their research, please don't just like this video, share it, and share other people's video output and their reports, and encourage them to do the research for themselves. I would be appalled if anyone simply regurgitated what I said, or if I ever heard someone say, well, Ian Crane said this or Ian Crane said that. And what Ian Crane said is not relevant. It's what your research shows that is relevant. It's having the comfort that your knowledge and what your statements you make are based on your research. And as Dr. Karen Douglas of Canterbury University has pointed out, those people who question the official narrative, those people who challenge what is pumped out as part of the lamestream programming, tend to be better informed and tend to be able to articulate the basis behind their belief system far better than those who don't. And those who simply regurgitate the government narrative tend to be the ones who get angry and frustrated when their arguments are simply shredded because they haven't done the research, and so their point of view is shallow. It has no substance. And one of the fantastic things about what's occurring here with the anti-fracking community is people who have never ever felt the need to scratch beneath the surface of the veneer over the charade of our democracy are now starting to realise that they have been hoodwinked, and funnily enough they don't like it, and so they are starting to dig a little bit deeper, and that's all we can ask. We still have a few weeks here for more people to comprehend the magnitude of the potential ecological disaster that will, not could, will unfold. And that statement is based on research, because everywhere, and I mean everywhere in the world, where the unconventional gas industry has established itself, it has led to problems not just of contamination of water, soil and air. It's causing phenomenal damage to the agricultural industry, whether it's arable or livestock farming. There have been studies, and this was flagged up in Vernal in Utah, where the midwives there spotted that there was an increase in spontaneous abortion and postnatal deaths, and the only thing that had changed in the area was the presence of the unconventional gas industry. It's proven that this industry is using carcinogenic materials, and even though it claims it's not, it's digging into the earth and then bringing back carcinogenic materials and naturally occurring radioactive materials, and just because they're natural doesn't mean they're safe. They're buried deep in the ground, perhaps for a reason. So please do your own research, and once you've done your own research, then please make a commitment, because if you don't, if you just sit back, then the legacy that we are potentially leaving future generations just doesn't bear thinking about. And in fact, it's quite possible that we may be the last generation that actually remembers a countryside that was stunningly beautiful, that was producing significant amount of food that the country obviously needs, and also providing the opportunity for people to take a break from their lives in the inner cities and come out into this beautiful environment. I mean, I have the luxury of spending a significant amount of time in the countryside, much more so than I did when I was a corporate slave, and I have to say there's really no contest. So we hope that we'll see more people coming down to Preston New Road, over on the other side of the Pennines, or here at Kirby Misperton. The momentum is building, And it's going to be very interesting to see how things unfold on Tuesday of this coming week, assuming the world doesn't end. Tuesday of this week, a number of local farmers will be coming down to show their support, all based on their own research, because like Victoria State in Australia, you know, this is very much a farming community, and they have done their research and they know fine well what the prognosis is if this industry gets a foothold. And as my good friend Brian Monk in Australia says many times, he says, Ian, all this started with just one well. Today, 11 years later, there are over 20,000 wells that have been drilled and fracked in southern Queensland, sucking the water out of the Great Artesian Basin, destroying the agricultural industry right across the Darling Downs. And here, it's just one well. It's just one well. It's just an exploratory well. It's just a test well. But if you think that's all it is, and you just sit back and let it happen, in a few years' time, you may live to regret that decision. So thanks for tuning in on me today. And yeah, I'm going to take a break tomorrow. I think it's I've got some work to do on the camp, but we'll be back here on Monday. And I know we've got people coming from elsewhere in the country next week, and hopefully the momentum will build here. And one hopes that Chief Constable Dave Hill will practice epistemological integrity and will indeed look at the evidence before he makes what is effectively a discriminatory statement, discriminating against the integrity of the protection community in favour of his officers. And you know, as we know, sadly the British police are not whiter than white. The vast majority are good people, but like any community, there's a few people that you know, perhaps shouldn't be there. But you know, there's no need to jump to the immediate protection of your community when the evidence may well suggest something completely different. So enjoy your day. If you are in North Yorkshire and you'd like to come down and visit us at the Kirby Misperton Protection Camp, the kettle's always on. If you feel like contributing to some of the work that needs to be done on camp, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, enjoy your weekend, and we'll be back with you on Monday morning with a live stream at 8:30. Thanks for joining us.